Welcome to the Hembury Books podcast. Today we have Mark Berridge, who is a keynote speaker and the author of the award-winning memoir, A Fraction Stronger, which was published by Major Street in 2022. His book begins with how his life changed in an instant when a biking accident left him with severe spinal cord damage, and it explores inspiring stories of resilience. Mark, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast.
No problem at all, Jess. It's an absolute pleasure to be on.
I was wondering whether you first conceived of the idea for a book while you were in hospital.
No, in hospital, probably about 2 weeks into the journey, because it was so tough, I started to take down notes on my iPad of what was going on, what I'd got up to this stage, just to try and, I guess it was all starting to blur, right? There's been so many challenges and I so often felt defeated. So I started to record those notes. And I never wanted to open that file on my iPad. It was sitting there for 15 months, and I just did not want to open it. I did not want to have to revisit that start. So, yeah, it was certainly not conceived at that point. But I think a little bit it started to form as an idea when in the last part of my hospital, when I could see that when I put effort in, I was getting results. And that really meant a lot to the physiotherapists in particular and the other nurses nurses and the people in hospital who were treating me, made the job better, right? That they could see that progress. And I could see there was other people around me that were struggling to apply themselves in the same way and make the same progress. So there's probably those elements of little seeds of seeing that, maybe I had something to share with other people for, that would help them, would help the people around them. But that really didn't sort of come to play out until about 15, 18 months after the accident, when I started to think, I think probably COVID helped. Like everyone was going through some form of disruption, and suddenly, oh, well, I've got a disruption of my own that was, relatively significant I could share and started to share.
The resilience we all needed in COVID.
Yeah, and I think also I was uncomfortable out sort of having a story that was all about me, and in some ways the fact that everyone was going through something, it sort of meant I could dress it up under, everyone faces disruptions, and we don't know how much those disruptions are impacting them behind the scenes. We sort of might make an assumption, but we don't really know what's going on for people behind the bits of their life we do see.
Could you please also give some background to your accident and what happened? I was, reading it and imagining how I would have felt in that moment and the terror, not knowing,
Yeah. I mean, so I was riding a fair bit, 250 Ks a week. It was my sort of headspace and fitness. And I was halfway through a very typical Sunday morning ride, 70 odd Ks. And the front wheel just hit a bit of sunken road, and suddenly it's losing traction with the road, and I've got to regain my balance. So first thing was, how the hell did that happen? And, how do I regain balance and, not just crash uncontrolled? And then, okay, now I've got control of the bike. I'm not going to get through this corner. What are my options? Try and force the corner, uncontrolled crash, or, oh, grassy park straight ahead. That looks great. I'm going to go there as my better choice. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to brake in time before I hit the pine barriers of the park. So I knew I was going over the handlebars. I was just hoping that would be not too impactful. But the way it played out, I went flying off the handlebars, catapulted high into the air, and then found a stormwater drain that was 5 foot below ground level. So I've assumed the Superman position, but that didn't protect me, and I crashed into the bottom of the ditch, and damaged my helmet. Thank God I had a really great helmet, amazing helmet, and fractured left wrist, 3 scapula, 3 ribs, but most materially crushed 2 vertebrae, and the pain was just, it's just off the scale. It was pretty, it's a pretty horrible moment.
You want to lose consciousness. That would be more, that would be, merciful in a way, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yes, perhaps. But if I did, then, the 8 guys are with me. I mean, I was lucky I had a nurse and 2 physios amongst other people with me. And maybe they would have been, been able to treat me without creating further risk. But of course, if I lose consciousness and then they somehow move me, then I might never have walked again. So I don't know if my body was, like, I felt I was incapable of moving, or my body was just smart enough to say, do not move, because at some point before the paramedics got me out of the ditch an hour later, there was, tests around, can you wiggle your toes? And I could. So I was never prepared for the news of spinal cord injury when I got into hospital, had all the scans, and a few hours later got that devastating news. So, just sort of body just is clever, and it just knew to protect myself, and it just braced up in that side. So I think as tough as it was and as bad as the pain was, being conscious probably was overall a better thing.
Yeah, I see. Okay. What's the most surprising thing you've learned about resilience, both your own and the other people that you interviewed?
Yeah, I think, it comes in different forms for everyone. I think, it's just that what things do you touch on in your own resilience that drives you on? I think, it's there when people don't expect it. Like they don't think they're strong enough, and then they find a way to get it. And I think that innateness and the fact it's actually a deeper well that we can go to than we imagine. And when we're really going through something tough, we do find a way. I think to me that was the biggest thing. And in terms of more the scientific research, I suppose it's interesting that there's probably a relatively young science, I suppose, for the fact that it's something that's actually inherent with us, that's helped us, survival of the fittest, helped us get to this point of evolution. I think it really only probably got started to study it in the 70s, and then obviously took off a lot more in the 2000s. So it's actually probably a relatively young science overall. I think also a bit of a surprise.
Okay. It's very well researched, your book, both, all that you give all the context sort of scientifically around the themes that you're talking about. What would your advice be for nonfiction authors around making sure that they get clearance from sources and that they attribute their sources correctly?
I think I probably relied on my editor, Brooke, to pull me up a lot. I mean, we were sharing the research really started to come on at the stage where I got in with Major Street Publishing, and Brooke and I were working together. So I'd find research that I liked the look of, and then we'd be testing that off each other, and we'd making sure that as we included it, that we attributed it correctly. And I think that, I've definitely got the tendency towards perfectionism that slows me down at different stages. So I found myself investing a lot of time to be quite precise about different stuff. And, certainly quotes too. I was really, really conscious that you often see quotes reused and it's not the original way it was intended, or it's not actually, or it's been, re-quoted by someone else, etc. And because I wanted some inspirational quotes in the book, I was also really keen to make sure that we went out to, quote attributor or other, wherever possible, finding the original source of the quote and seeing it in situ and knowing that it was genuine.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Now, what was your journey to publication like?
Oh, well, I think mainly it was fantastic. Like, I really enjoyed the writing process. I probably had 2 really intense periods. So working in my book coaches community. So I was in Kelly Irving's community, probably about 2 or 3 month really intense period there. And then when the book first attracted interest from Major Street Publishing, and started down that journey, and Leslie said basically, look, the book's quite good, but it's not good enough. Do you want to put in the same amount of work again? And I saw that as being great feedback, really, because it meant another hard slog, but meant somebody thought it was worth that hard slog. And so I probably had another 3 months of relatively intense rework there. So I probably had those 2 intense pillars of work, and I probably had one phase mainly around chapters 4 and 5 of the book, 4, 5, 6, which I was reworking, and I just couldn't get the balance of those chapters right. And I was a bit frustrated, I suppose, just struggling, and I didn't want to get behind my timeline. But in general, just found it a joyful process. So
you began pitching with the full manuscript from the sounds of it. Is that correct? Or did you, as a nonfiction, did you pitch it, when you had just written the first 3 chapters or something?
No, I think like most authors, I like the idea of being picked up, by a publisher.
Yeah.
But at the point where Major Street got interested in my story, I think I'd probably pretty much made up my mind I'd actually self-publish at that point. I think I just ran out of energy for the process, and I was satisfied that it was good enough. And so then just by chance through the book community, I think Leslie became aware of my book through Kelly or however it worked and reached out to me, and that's how that process started. So yeah, I think I only
day when you got that email.
Yeah. Well, it was just exploratory, and then it was now, you know, in order to get people to like your book, you need to, guess be more vulnerable all the way through the book, because I'd been quite sheltered about, I guess a lot of the stories I was writing them a bit too dryly. I had a very long, an overly long introduction that was more vulnerable, and after that, I tried to make the rest of the book a bit more just cursory, if you like, or just like more just short and sharp around the stories and the takeaway from that story. And Leslie said, no, you've got to go really deeper into these stories. And so I had to rewrite the first 3 chapters basically to that level. And if I could, if that was good enough, then we'd go forward. So yeah, exciting.
Yeah, and would you agree that publishing requires resilience?
Oh, totally. Not as much as marketing, though. I reckon book marketing is harder. It's more lonely than writing. Well, at least it has been for me. It's just hard work. It's a sustained effort.
So. Yeah, it is. It's got to be continuous. That's the magic word I always say. But it is, and being your own champion and stuff. Some people like do that quite naturally. But I know myself, like I still, I don't do it as much as I should. But I do find part of it fun also, which brings us to the fact that your book has won 16 awards. It came out 2 years ago and it's won 16 awards, which is absolutely amazing. How'd you do it?
Luck. I don't know. So I really, I started with this idea of writing a book that might just help a few people tackle a tough spot a bit better.
Yep. And
then the first bit of radio and promo around the book, I started getting these amazing emails back of people where I really done that, but had done it like far deeper, far better than I ever would have thought. And so suddenly I think, well, I've got to try harder at getting the book into more hands. It's clearly meant something to these people, beyond even what I hoped. And I certainly had hopes. So that really was the instigator between, me saying, well, what sort of, things can I do to raise awareness of this book? And Book Awards was one of the ones I thought of. So really in July, I reckon August, maybe it was June, July 2022, the book had come out in February 2022. I went really hard at a whole lot of awards, and I just basically spent, I think, 2 weekends in a row where, more than half that weekend I would just research what awards do I think this book might go all right in, what are the books that I think are similar that have gone all right in different awards, and which ones do I think look credible as awards too. Like, you sort of want to win ones that you think that's meaningful. So yeah, I spent a lot of time.
I think that's fantastic. So did you find some useful in terms of that barometer of, is this one worth entering? Is it because some websites, they look amazing, but then you think it's a bit of a honeypot for generating revenue. How did you kind of start to see maybe subtle differences?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I used the Independent Alliance of Authors, or ALI, their website a little bit, and they've got they have like caution on different awards for and some of those I'd already entered, and you start to see that the people that those awards you might win, like at the very first silver medal I won, it was all about how do we take money off you basically to market your book. And of course at that stage my book was on its way to the US. It hadn't actually been released in the US yet, and you sort of dream of oh well, maybe if I fall for this, and I think that's the right words, then maybe this book will somehow take off in the US because it's a bigger market. And so you want to be talked into those things, and you just got to be strong as an author. I don't think there's a lot of people willing to take money off you in this industry, and you just got to say, no, actually, what are my goals here? Am I achieving them? And
does this competition have integrity and stuff like that?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I just think it's so mean-spirited because they're appealing to an author's dreams and they're exploiting that. And it's really, I think that's a really horrible thing to do. But that kind of, pay us $1,200 and you'll get a free press release as a finalist or something. It's a shame because then people start to sort of shrink away from the good opportunities, I think,
Even like the simplest things, like, it's only through having, entered those awards, and you see that some of the awards, they won't even give you a proper sticker, like a high resolution electronic sticker. They charge you $80 or something US once you've won the award to get a high resolution one. And one of the award programs actually didn't even make it known that you could get the free low resolution sticker until, or they call it a seal, until I think a week after. So they'd hit you up with 3 emails marketing trying to upsell you before they sent you the email saying, and here's your free low resolution version. And again, that stinks. But so beware, really, unfortunately, and that's why I think that it's good that there's actually tools out there that are now trying to help people do the work that I sort of did manually.
Let's talk about the good ones. What are the ones that you recommend, both in Australia and overseas?
So again, you need to the authors will need to research their own, books and awards that are fit, right? But have a look. Once you then think that's a potential thing, see what they've done in terms of, I guess, really promoting their authors. So, for example, one of the book awards that I think it's probably on the way up, I don't think it's that big, called Goody Business Book Awards that I won in the States. They just do so much to consistently get in the corner of the authors. If you win an award with another program, they'll celebrate you. They just do everything to celebrate you. I'm very fortunate to have an amazing relationship now with the Chanticleer Book Award community in Bellingham in Washington State, USA. I was absolutely crazy and flew there April last year because my book was a finalist, and I'm just going, like, I've got a commercial background, right? Like, so I worked in big mining company. We're mean on costs, all my career, even though I was at the marketing end of the business. And all I could think of, Mark, you're spending $6,000 to fly over there for this conference, and you're lucky if you make $60 profit out of book sales of this. What are you doing? But it was all driven by the things I've loved about writing. Initially pre-book publication, it was the friendships I made with the people that were writing with me. Then initially it was these first, responses back to the book and the impact it was having on people, and the relationships, the friendships I built out of the people that read my book. And then it became these connections that I've formed by attending authors conferences, and that book award ceremony that I've been lucky enough to go to twice. And I got to give a keynote speech there, and then my book actually won, and I was just in complete shock. Actually, the next morning I was literally just had to sit in the hotel. I was so overwhelmed I was so surprised that it happened. And I guess when you see, because sometimes, like, come back to the comment about how do you know if awards are credible or meaningful, etc. And it was only by actually being there in the room for the award ceremony and meeting these, 170 authors or soon to be authors attend this conference for the 20 awards that they've got. And you think, I can tell by, the number of books you've done before, by speaking to you, that this is a meaningful award. The way you're here, what you've done, and you only know that by being there, and then you start to form relationships with these incredible people, and you just think, how lucky am I that my life took a turn in this direction, and I'm now meeting these inspirational people that are just, and it's a brave thing to write a book and put yourself out there, and and they're doing it all the time, and they're doing it well, and I'm now lucky enough to meet those people. How good's that?
And you have, potentially lifelong connections. And you made a beautiful Instagram post about how it started in hospital, how it's going.
Yeah. I was feeling a bit soppy that day, a couple of days afterwards. And and I literally, and on the plane home, I started reading a book from a author I'd met there, and it was just, everything about that first trip was just so precious.
Beautiful. And especially in the context of where you've come from, it's a really difficult, dark place to find yourself in. I think it just gives inspiration to other people facing a crisis right now. I always say, tough to live through, great material for a memoir.
Yeah, well, people always say to me, the book's so it's been so great, when are you going to write the next one? But then they quickly jump into, but you're not allowed to create another event just so that
because people do it.
Yeah.
People do it.
So, no, I've definitely got more non-fiction book ideas in the future. So, and you know, and I think that first time going to that conference, it shifted my headspace from somebody who'd written a book and wanted to write another couple of books to someone who really wanted to be an author. And I know those two things are the same when you logically apply, you know, think about the words, but to me they were somehow slightly different. I really wanted to feel and behave and be an author, and I think that is my future. Yeah,
that's amazing. Now, most competitions, because you have surveyed the landscape, is it correct that most have an entry fee?
Oh yeah, I think almost everything does. Sometimes you know, it might be together with a book review, so sometimes you can evaluate that and say, oh, I get a book review as well as an entry.
Yeah,
but yeah, pretty much anything. Like you know, and then you got hidden costs, so you might be paying, I think, you know, maybe Australia it's $50-$60 for the book competition, the one or two I entered in Australia, and then in the US, typically $50 to $70 for the first award, and sometimes they'll coax you into doing different categories by being $40 for the second award, etc. And then, of course, many of them will want a number of hard copy books, so you're then spending another $50, maybe $40, you know, sending, as I did, or Australia posting off your books to people. Although sometimes you can get around that by, some of them will accept Amazon copies, so you just buy it from the Amazon US store and save yourself postage, etc., and set it that way, which I did once successfully. And you can look for the ones that have ebooks, because then you save on that side of things. Yeah, sure. But it's an expensive business, and I probably would say, Jess, I took the mindset there that, you know, at that stage, probably all up, I'd spent 30 odd grand on my book to get to that point, between you know, buying books through Major Street Publishing and Publicist and everything I'd done editing up to that point in time. And I sort of looked at it as being, I've got this incredible early feedback on my book. Yeah. If I spend 10% more, I might give it more of a chance that I should do that. I would have done that in my recovery. That's what I did. I went 10% harder because it was going to give me 10% better results. I hope.
Stronger.
Right? You know, just a little bit. What's that increment? What's that increment that's going to help me? Now, it didn't really shift the dial of any sales, but
that's
did it give more
question? What's the relationship between winning and sales?
Zippo, but I think very little. But does it add to the longevity of the book from a gravitas perspective? You would hope. There's just so many books out there. It's so hard to stand out. Really, it's people referring your book. People that enjoy it, referring it to others. That's the strongest thing that helps book marketing, I think. If you can get people making posts. Yep.
Opportunities for direct sales, if you can get yourself in front of an audience and take your book along, those opportunities are gold dust, I think.
Exactly. Like public speaking, taking books along.
Yeah.
Definitely they're all really powerful ways forward. But I think it's the people, it extends the people you met. Even like one of those awards I talked about where they, you know, really overmarket. At least they had like an online ceremony and they put you in little breakout rooms and you got to meet authors from around the world and hear their interesting stories, and you end up creating connections that you never know when they're going to be valuable. Yeah. It
enriches your life to have those connections, I think. So I think often that the biggest benefits of publishing a book are non-financial, but I still think it should be an excellent business proposition, and that, you know, it's just a question of finding the most effective ways to stand out in terms of marketing. So what would be your tip? What's been your most, your highest impact, lowest for the return on investment for marketing that you've found?
Oh, I think definitely it's when friends put out, like, social media, LinkedIn in particular, posts. The senior friends put on LinkedIn posts about the book. That is the most effective. Like, you know, I wake up and suddenly I've sold 4 books and I go, hang on, how'd that happen? You know, out of nowhere. And you then see that you've been tagged in a LinkedIn post, or maybe I haven't even been tagged. I didn't even know. But eventually I sort of, you know, someone reaches out and said, oh, you know, I bought your book because, you know, so-and-so did this post, and you see. So that's probably the, you know, that's it's just the loveliest, isn't it, as well, right?
It is.
And yeah, other than that, I think it's the it is definitely just being visible. Like and it's not exactly cheap because you got to put the effort out there, but just how do you keep your story, like putting up content, staying visible, and then remind people. And the other one that was really effective for me, but not necessarily cheap, is because the Royal Brisbane Women's Hospital here in Brisbane was so important to me in the first 11 days, and basically gave me the opportunity to walk again. I get involved in their Giving Day every year where they fundraising. And the first year was nice, but I didn't really feel like I made much of an impact. And then second year I thought, well, I'm not going to have that feeling again. I'm going to change this up and do something different. So the month leading into the Giving Day and on the Giving Day itself, I had a campaign of buy my book and I'll donate the money to the charity. And we ended up, raising $5,000 for Royal Brisbane that year as a result of that campaign. Plus, I seed my book into the community, so I'm feeling great. It's actually doing what the book was meant to be, which was get into people's hands and to help, to help people, and help. Really so that was nice, but it wasn't cheap because effectively, as my wife said, but Mark, that doesn't make sense financially. Okay, darling. Yes, I know that, but it feels like the right thing to do.
It was Sarah Martin of Dear Psychosis because you did the author expert community with her, and she said, "Oh, Jess, I came to know some other authors, and there's Mark who's stupendously successful or something." So I was like, "Oh, I have to talk to this stupendously successful guy." It is very impressive, like. Coming at it from never met you, your online brand is wonderful, and it's a book of substance as well. So there's definitely, you have a speaking career. How has the book sort of enhanced that?
Oh, like my biggest speaking gigs I just wouldn't have got, but for the but for the book, it definitely put me on the map for some opportunities. That doesn't mean it. It's like anything, you got to work at it, right? I came in that career transition at 50 years of age, and it's going to, I want to succeed at it instantaneously because that's just sort of what I want. But, it takes time and effort, and like anything, you got to build the muscle and build the brand. And I think that's probably the thing I just got to keep reminding myself is that even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it from a financial results perspective, I'm making progress, and this emotional reward and the people I've met, the connections I've got, are priceless, really. And even though it hasn't, as we know, many overnight successes take a long, long time, and this may never be classified as an overnight success, but it's very early days yet in that journey.
And you've won 16 awards, so you are a success, a resounding success.
Well, and let's say the book was written to change a few lives, and that's what it did. And it's done more than that. So absolutely, by any measure of how I started the book journey, it's been a success. And the awards are amazing. They're just joyful. And we don't do that enough as authors, of just sitting back and enjoying those moments.
Yeah. I call it banking the moment. When something really good happens, don't just move on to the next thing. Sit down, savor it, think about it, go that's amazing. We should acknowledge the people who judge awards as well, because of course there needs to be an entry fee. I know there isn't for the Business Book Awards that Publish Central have got going at the moment, with Major Street as well, but that appears to be the exception, not the rule, that there's no entry fee. But judging the books would take a lot of time. So the entry fees, I think, otherwise, how do you fund something, right?
Yeah, and again, the ones where they're giving you a proper high quality, a review, or a proper high quality electronic signature, the seal that you can use on your website or on a future print run, if you get that opportunity, are great. The ones that give you some medals, I'm not sure if they.
Cool!
Like, you got a little of these babies.
Oh, I thought they were cycling medals.
No, some of them. They're just for, if he ever listens, they're for Peter Scott, who actually earned medals in war, and for the Navy, who at his book launch, it was wear your medals, and I didn't turn up with these because that would have been embarrassing for everyone. But it was a joke on the side, which I could get.
Can I see? Can you show us a medal? Can you buy the medal?
Some of them are pretty.
It's amazing. Oh,
Hang on, this is the best one. This is the Chanticleer one. They're incredible, and the American authors. So Chanticleer, the one I went to in Washington State, they love the American authors. To get one of these, it's just revered. And if you get in the top 6, you get a slightly smaller one. Looks very similar. You probably couldn't tell the difference if you weren't, if you weren't really following it closely. And then you have to give back the littler one to get this slightly bigger one if you get the very top of your
how amazing.
Your category, and it's just amazing. And again, if they're in
one of the metal ones, can you show me? There's some writing on the outside.
Yes. Which any favorite? Well, let's go gold for Indie Book Awards.
That is amazing.
Now it does blur, but I think Indie Book Awards, I'm sure they're the ones where they're amazing. So, like the little things you probably wouldn't even know, and I didn't know when I researched that award, is most of the judges actually do a short review of your book when they, winning and what they loved about it, and that's really beautiful to read that as well. And then, so because it's got her name there as the judge, I wrote to her afterwards and said, if I was writing about my own book, I would love to have written a paragraph that was beautifully written about my own book as what you wrote. I am so, so grateful for what you wrote. Not to mention the fact I won. I'm also grateful for that. And then we just had, a couple of days worth of really beautiful exchange. And she said, just keep writing. And have you looked at this particular resource, being the Non-Fictions Authors Association in the US? Because Stephanie Chandler, who runs that one, well, I don't know particularly well. I've never really followed it very closely, but, she's just amazing. You should really, follow that more closely. And I was on their blog, but I hadn't really been reading it. So, just all these lovely little tips of people that get in your corner. And that was just, another bit of serendipity that came out of entering an award, which I entered out of desperation of how do I market this book, because it's had the impact I wanted to, and now I want more of that impact. And as a result, lots of little beautiful things like that.
That's amazing.
Sorry, did I bite it? Was I supposed to bite it? I didn't.
That is just so cool. I did not know the medals were so big. I never even really imagined them in the physical form. I didn't sort of know. That is just the coolest.
They're solid. And then so sometimes they want you to then spend another $70 or something to buy those. So I haven't done that when you got to then buy again, although there was one that I really liked the award, and it got a tempting, because again, the Indie Book Awards, I think, won maybe $150 US for winning. So again, I got my, double my entry fee back. And as you say, right, there's a lot of different effort that goes into it. So let's take the Chanticleer. I think they have 4 rounds of judging or 5 rounds of judging. So first of all, it goes to what they call the slushers, and probably 5 slushers that are reading your book. And they're basically just trying to take the real, the ones that really need a bit more TLC out of the program. So, and then, so some books will get culled at the slushing phase. And I think if you get more than, if there's 3 slushers reading your book or something, if you get, 2, you're out, or maybe it's 5 and you get, 2, you're out. And then it'll go on to the next round of judges, and then it'll go on to the next round of judges. And, and then finally once you're in the finalist judges read it as well. So you go, even that, when you talk about the cost for them to give some money back to all those people who are doing the judging, but also, geez, would you actually consider paying $40 to have your book read by 20 different people or whatever? No, maybe it's not that many, maybe I'm exaggerating, but 10 different people that would otherwise never see your book that might actually positively refer it. That's not terrible either.
No, that's not terrible. Is there anything that you would do differently a second time around?
I think having seen, I guess, the trends in the US towards self-publishing and how great authors, when they've got a really strong marketing program and they pick their avatar really well on social media and build a presence around that social media. So there's a guy in the US I met this April, D.D. Black, who's done an incredible job with this crime fiction series of, being an overnight success. 10 years into a, 12, it took him 10 years to work out how best to do it. Now he's, had 2 years of amazing. And, just that, self-publishing and backing yourself around, this is my market, and just having a social media that's really from day one at that market, I think is probably the way going forward. Because
wow, so you're saying you want to self-publish? You're going to
because I guess the reality is the only person
Who can champion your book is you.
The champion book. The only person it's an emotional process for is you.
Yeah.
Like, you know, my local, I know Sarah's had amazing success with her local bookstore, but for me, my local bookstore, you know, basically said, oh, I think it'll be a slow burner. And, you know, they hand back their 10 copies, you know, within 6 months
so
or something.
90 days or whatever.
So whatever. Yeah, you know, and it's a consignment industry and everyone can hand it back. And unless you're, you know, really turning over strongly, like one of the other big bookstores, like really top level bookstores here in Brisbane, not the chains, but local bookstore that's highly thought of. My memory is that they sold my book in the first week and never bothered to replace it because they've done their job of moving it and you don't know if you're going to move it again, right? So
as a business person though, does that just kind of confound you? There's a lot that what I come across with the bookstores is, you know, the pulping and the waste and the, you know, not being incentivized enough to sell the copies that are provided. To me, it's, are other industries operating like this? I don't know.
No, it feels like it's, and I get that it's a, you know, fragile industry overall, right? Booktopia is, you know, a good example for us in Australia, and it's hard, but yeah, it's really tough on authors, and you take that outcome, and then yeah, even silly things like that, like as you say, the books are on consignment, and so they get their money back. You know, as an author, you know, if you've been paid for copies that went out there and then get returned, you have to give your royalty back, and your royalty was so low anyway.
Yeah.
But then the books don't actually get returned. They just think, what a waste. Like, you know, surely they should at least have to go back, and I'd buy them back off the you know, publisher at that, you know, at a lower price than them just getting pulped or
Yeah,
so there's a lot of waste.
It broke my heart when my book got pulped in New Zealand. It was during COVID, and a book was deemed a non-essential item, which I take issue with. And I never stood a chance, you know, even though I, you know, got on breakfast TV or something, and I was like, this is not the way. This is disrespectful, you know. It left a bad taste in my mouth, you know.
Well, and even ebooks. You can return ebooks.
Oh, really?
What's the logic of that?
There's no logic.
One quarter, I got like -7 ebook sales for the quarter, and you go, what? How can that be? Anyway.
Yeah, well, I know Amazon clamped down. They did have too lenient return rules of ebooks, and they have, and some people were terrible taking advantage of it and stuff, reading the book and then returning it. So like getting free books, and they've tried to clamp down, but you know.
So, and probably that's worthwhile, like while we're talking Amazon, maybe when one of the benefits when you are self-publishing is, you know, if you're self-publishing, if you try something marketing, you might actually get data back. You know, it's not going to be perfect data back, and you get to then say, well, that's working, that's not, right? So not only is your margin bigger to warrant trying things,
of course,
but you're actually getting the data. And the problem when you are a published author is you're just not getting any data. It's nearly impossible to get any quality data, and certainly not at a real time. So you can be trying things like entering lots of book awards madly, and no idea is actually working or not.
Cause and effect. I mean, that's the thing. You can take your price down. I have done that before. I've taken my price down to like $5, and you just see it go whoosh, and you go, okay, that works. Now I'm going to turn off the tap. It's just fun because I still see it as, well, my book is in circulation. That's always my thing. And then turn it off. And it's, you know, it's like having a business with a product, but the product is behind a black curtain and you can't touch it. And it's your IP, you know, it should be. By the way, I did not know that you were going to say that. This probably looks like a setup because, of course, my authors are self-published, and I'm like, so what would you do differently? I didn't know that you were going to say that.
It's not a setup, and I don't know that I don't know that I've talked to my closest writing friends about that before, but I don't know that this would be the first time I've declared that publicly. And because, you know, you never say never, right? If we got the right deal and the right circumstances, I might
the right contract
might publish again. But I guess the biggest thing for me is that, you know, I was always prepared to try harder, to try things, and I just couldn't see what was working and what wasn't. And as you said, the only person that really champions your book is you. You know, for you, it's emotional. For everyone else, it's just purely business decisions. It's arm's length. And, you know, if that means that they don't feel it's working or can't see how it's going to work in the future, they'll move on to something else. It's a sausage factory, and there's another book coming. There's more books to put on the shelves.
Yeah, the level of investment, it's just different. It's just even the bestsellers, I think they sell themselves because it's not sustained, and it's got to be sustained. So I think, and if you're not in that category of the 20% that you mentioned to earlier, I don't think you get enough chance of success because not enough effort is invested in those titles that are within the 80%. But, you know, I don't have firsthand experience. It might be great. You've done traditional, you've you know, succeeded in what so many authors are unable to do. Try self-publishing, see what happens.
Exactly. That's not forever. It won't be forever either, right? If I go that way. And I said, we talked about D.D. Black just before. You know, I think he was with a smaller publisher in the States to start with for the first two sort of series iterations. They went okay. They were getting a little bit more momentum, but they really weren't taking off. And then he tried to pitch to other publishers, didn't succeed, and eventually made the decision to self-publish and went very, very strategic with all his you know, avatar-based marketing. And now he's an overnight success 12 years later, as I said, you know, the last 2 years, and it's just gone crazy, really interesting. And, you know, he's a great story and he spoke so beautifully at the Chanticleer conference this year and did a couple other sessions that were so valuable to other authors, so generous. And he said there's just too many people out there willing to take your money off you. And so therefore I just want to share everything I learned to help other authors. And it's just wonderful.
I'm gonna look him up. Are you able to give us a hint of what you might write about next, just to finish up?
So my planning is I want to get to write plays. I love theatre. So I've got couple of different non-fiction book ideas, probably 3 or 4 that come through different stages. So one, I jokingly, the working titles mostly follows instructions, that idea of life being some element of planning and some element of adaptation. So yeah, mostly follows instructions, mental blank on the other one. Anyway, then move into some fiction before I go on to trying to write plays, because I think I've got to get better at that craft of setting scene efficiently, character development efficiently in longer form fiction before I try and do it in plays. But who knows, right? I might not have that many years left. I might need to speed things up. Who knows, right? Just get into it. Get the momentum.
Your last. You sound so creative. What's beautiful, I think, is that you have all these ideas and you know with certainty that you're going to execute. You're going to do it. And it's this amazing repertoire of diverse genres and stuff, which is just amazing. Enjoy it. Enjoy the process of writing those books. It will be some of the best times of your life.
I've just recently lost my mum at the end of July, and she certainly was that sort of person that, you know, she was an incredibly creative artist. Like, she could literally touch any art and be amazing at it, particularly sculpture at the back end of her life, but silk paintings before that, and so many different forms over her life. And she always had that view that she could, she had doubt, no doubt, anxiety with it, but she sort of had that inner belief that she could tackle anything and figure it out. And no doubt she's, had that impact on me, even if mine's more in the written form than the artistic form so far. Who knows?
They're just different forms of art, but you've both got a fire inside.
Yeah.
From thought to actually getting it onto the page or the canvas. A lot of people have the thoughts, but it doesn't come out.
Yeah. And again, perhaps I might have been like that, right? I'm an accidental author. The cycling crash catapulted me back in contact with that creative side and let it out. So I must have said unlucky, but lucky thousands of times of 2019. And that's absolutely how I feel. And I guess I don't even need to repeat unlucky, but lucky anymore, because increasingly I just feel lucky that this is where I've landed.
Oh, that's a beautiful sentiment to end on, Mark. Thanks for coming on the podcast and being so generous with sharing all your insights.
My absolute pleasure. And I'm off to Trent Dalton's Love Stories tonight at QPAC. How excited am I?
Awesome.
Brisbane Festival, how good.
I saw Trent Dalton at the Byron Writers Festival and I was like, it was amazing. Enjoy that.
All right. Take care all. Thanks. Bye.